Hi again. My name is Nicole Sharp, and I am an advocate for domestic violence awareness and prevention. I have a nonprofit called the Heather Hurley Foundation um, to end domestic violence. And it is named after my late mother, who died as a result of domestic violence. And in these series of videos, I have been reading different chapters of my memoir that I wrote a while back called The End of November, Growing Up with Domestic Violence. Sorry, it's backwards. But it can be found on Amazon. And I wrote this in my childhood voice as I witnessed domestic violence. Domestic violence was like a strong entity that I grew up with, unfortunately. My earliest memories are of domestic violence between my father and my mother. And it just changed the trajectory of my entire life. And I wrote the book in order to help people, to help abusers, to help current victims, and to help the children who are the most silent of the victims of domestic violence. We can't forget the children who remain silent, but yet they're being carved out and molded according to what they see. And I can attest to that because I grew up experiencing domestic violence through the eyes of my mother, who was the victim of my father too many times. And so now we're up to chapter 14. This is the transition chapter. This is the chapter that is entitled November 22nd. That's the day that I lost my mother to domestic violence. It's a long chapter, so I'm going to break it up. Not only is it long, it's hefty, and it brings back a lot of memories. And so I'm just going to cut it in half. And so we begin reading now. I have not written anything in any of my blogs for over a week now. Granted, affairs at work and at home have picked up a notch in the busy department, but that has never stopped me from writing before. I did a momentary Zen-like pause yesterday and did some introspection, coming to the only plausible conclusion. The anniversary of my mom's death is creeping up. Like a natural law embedded in my inner clock, the anniversary of her murder causes a reaction in me every single year. The same phenomenon happens to my little sister, who was 8 years old at the time. Usually, we're depressed for a week or so. This year has been my busiest year for some reason, and I haven't shed a tear as of yet, but that's not an indication that I'm not tortured inside anymore. And as far as my writing goes, I have not experienced that aha moment that would normally make me drop my Twizzler and rush to my computer to write until 1 a.m. I'm forcing myself to write now. Tomorrow, November 22nd, 2008, will be 17 years since my mother was murdered by my father. That's when I wrote this book. Right now, at this moment in 2025, it's 35 years since I've lost my mother. Is it 35 years? Yes, it's 35 years. And today is November 11th, 2025. So, yeah, in about 12, 11 days, it will be November 22nd, and that will be 35 years. It feels like only 1 year has passed. Still fresh in my psyche are the details leading up to her death and the details directly after. It was a cold November Friday night. For the first time in the 6 years that we were living at our home, my father locked the only lock on the front door that everyone knew I didn't have a key for. It couldn't be locked without a key. My father was now a supervisor in New York City Transit, and so his job, according to him, was to drive around in a van and make sure all his workers were doing what they were supposed to be doing. He used to come home for lunch on occasion, so he was the only one who had access to the house after I left for school. When I came home from school, I was locked out. I headed over to my cousin's house just 2 houses away, as my father probably estimated I would do. My sister followed suit when her school bus dropped her off. We had fun playing around at my cousin's house. It was peaceful compared to ours. So as I looked through my cousin's bedroom window and saw my father pulling up in his car from work around 5 p.m., I didn't go home. I wanted to stay where I was for as long as I could. He didn't even come over to get my little sister and I, because this would get in the way of his plan. Time passed, and when my mom arrived about 7:30 p.m. with my little brother, my father was asleep. He didn't even hear the noisy garage door open. Mom came over to my cousin's house to collect my sister and I. We entered our home to see my father just rousing from his nap. We took our coats off and dispersed. I went straight to the living room television in expectation of my mother's favorite show, ironically titled Family Matters. She affectionately called it Urkel, after the character, the minor character who later became the main character. I remember my mom rummaging through her coats in the closet looking for Natalie's misplaced prescription for eyeglasses. Not too long after that, my father picked a senseless fight with my mom. I resigned to my bedroom upstairs as usual, but as I found out later, Natalie started attacking my father as he attacked our mom. He pushed her away and continued to hammer into our mother. After he beat her up in our living room, my mother headed quietly down to the basement to do laundry as if nothing ever occurred. My little 3-year-old brother was always with my mom, so he followed her down the stairs, crawling backwards. My sister also followed her down there to protect her. I think the intention in their young minds was to make mommy feel better with their company. I, on the other hand, was bred in a more hostile environment. So I did what I did every time a blow-up would occur. I vacated the premises. I stayed in my room until things quieted down. After 9 p.m., I decided to go back downstairs. There I would witness a more horrific series of events. As I sat there watching Family Matters in the living room by myself, I peeped my father reaching for his gun on the top shelf in the front coat closet. This is the same gun he showed me earlier that same week on Monday and told me, "If any of your mother's friends come here when I am not here, shoot them." I thought to myself, he has finally lost it. I didn't answer him. After he placed the gun high up in the closet, he went to the kitchen with a coffee tin. He told me to come in the kitchen with him. This was earlier in the week. He stood by the counter. We stood by the counter side by side. Then he uncovered the tin to reveal innumerable bullets with bronze-colored tips. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My heart started jumping out of my chest, but I couldn't let him think at that moment that I was against him. I acted like everything that he was doing was normal. And I tried really hard not to set him off by shaking. He said, "Use these bullets if you have to. The gun is loaded right now anyway." When my mom came home that night, I told her every piece of craziness my father told me. "He put the gun in the closet, Mommy," I yelled. I don't know what was going through my mother's head. She started to smile and say, "Your father is just stupid." I tried to inject some sense into her, but Mommy, he put the gun right there in the closet. You want to see it? She shook her head with the same strange smile on her face and said, "He will never use that." I don't know if my mom was trying not to get me riled up by her couldn't care less attitude, but it freaks me out. I thought I had gone deeper into the depths of the Twilight Zone, and my thinking was abnormal, and everything that I thought was weird was really normal. Had she forgotten all the times he put the gun to her head? And what about all those times he threatened to kill her and pulled a veil over her face in her coffin? Had she forgotten all of those beatings? Nothing made sense to me. My father came home that night, that Monday night, as peaceful as can be, but then he never came home the next night or the night after that. And he has never stepped out before. I don't know if my mom knew where he was, but she didn't seem to be alarmed. She may have been relieved. He showed up again on Thursday with no explanation, at least not to me anyway. Here he was now, Friday night, with the gun from the closet in his hand, heading down to the basement. When he was out of sight, I immediately ran upstairs to the phone in my mom's bedroom. Then I thought quickly, who should I call? The police? No, I got in trouble for that from my mother before. My grandmother? Yes. This was a decision that got me blamed by my family members for my mother's death for a few years to come. While I waited for Grandma to pick up the phone, I heard a loud commotion in the basement. They were definitely fighting. I heard my mother scream in frustration, "If you're going to shoot me, go ahead and just shoot me." That's when I heard the shot. Then dead silence. My grandmother repeated, "Hello, hello?" In a daze, I stated very plainly, "Daddy just killed Mommy." My grandmother screamed, "What? What's going on there, Nicole? What's going on?" At that moment, my father started to dial from the rotary phone in the kitchen downstairs. When he realized I was already on the phone, he yelled at me to get off the phone. In his frantic sounding words, "Nicole, get off the phone now. I'm trying to call the cops. Something happened to your mother." I hung up the phone slowly, hearing the drifting screams coming from my grandmother. I floated downstairs to meet my brother and sister's blank faces at the top of the steps. I told them to go up to my bedroom, and they did quickly. I don't know why, but something told me to go towards my father in the kitchen. I heard him telling a tale to the police, as he usually did. On the way to the kitchen, I stopped at the basement door because the yellow walls leading down were all covered in thick, bloody handprints. When I reached my father, I saw his hand smothered in bright red blood. The yellow rotary phone on the wall was now red. When he saw me, he hung up the phone and walked towards me. He stood next to me and watched me standing in that one spot, immovable, watching the bloodied walls. "Go downstairs and see what happened to your mother. Something happened to your mother," he said calmly. Something told me not to go downstairs. I had a strong feeling that as I walked down those stairs, my father would shoot me in the back. He was standing right next to me on my left side, with the gun held down in his right hand. I started, I was staring at the blood, and he was staring at me, waiting to see if I would go down. As much as I loved my father, and as much as I knew he loved me, I knew this man was going to shoot me once I turned my back and walked down those basement steps. He professed to love my mom, his wife of 17 years, and yet he just killed her. What would stop him from doing the same to me? Then it seemed like some kind of force pulled him away from me and back to the yellow, bloodied rotary phone to call the police again. And I'm going to stop right here and then read the other half next time. It's very heavy. This is not something that I would wish upon my worst enemy. Yes. So my mother, she really, I don't know if she was truly just ignoring the warning signs or she just didn't want me to be scared. I think that she didn't want me to be scared. And it was interesting that the weekend before that and earlier that week, I remember one of my aunts saying that my mom came over to see her, and it was kind of strange that she spent a lot of time with her and the kids, and they were just talking, and it was like that was the last time that she saw my mother alive. So it was like my mom knew that she was leaving this plane. There's a lot to unpack here, but it affects me still to this day after 35 years, and it will continue to affect me for the rest of my life. Even if you have experienced seeing domestic violence in your household and it didn't end in murder like mine, it affects you very, very much. We need therapy. We need therapy. And so I still see a therapist till this day because it's very important to speak to a professional, someone who is trained to help you hold your hand and help you walk through these very tumultuous times and the memories that don't go away. We don't want to self-medicate till we forget, because you never forget. We don't want to do that because that just puts us further down into a hole, but we want to climb out of that hole. And to have someone like a therapist to grab our hand and to help us out is amazing. I also attribute the fact that I can still function optimally even after the murder of my mother by my father's hands in childhood to God, my belief in God, and knowing that He is in control, and reading His Word, the Bible, and finding comfort in the Holy Spirit. So my faith is what carries me. My God is who carries me. And in the next segment, which is the other half of the chapter 14, November 22nd, you will see how some supernatural things occurred. Some supernatural things definitely occurred. And so stay tuned for that. It's a bit heavy. And so my disclaimer, which is coming a little late, is that it may trigger someone. Just keep that in mind also for the next one. I will give the trigger warning in the beginning of the next one. But thank you for listening once again. The end of November, Growing Up with Domestic Violence is what I'm reading, my memoir. And if you like, subscribe and share to others that these videos may help. Thank you.